In February 2015, Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan were reported as writing a new Halloween film described as a recalibration rather than a reboot, which Malika Cade and Matt Stein were producing. On June 15, 2015, the Weinstein Company was reported to be moving forward with another Halloween sequel, tentatively titled Halloween Returns, with Dunstan directing. It would have been a standalone film set to reintroduce audiences to Michael Myers years after his initial rampage from Halloween and 1981's Halloween 2, as he was confronted by a new generation of victims while on death row. The film would have been set in 1988 and involved Michael Myers escaping his execution from a power surge and going on a rampage in the town of Russellville, Illinois. On May 24, 2016, Blumhouse Productions and Miramax were announced to be co-financing a new film, with Universal Pictures distributing through the studio's output deal with Blumhouse. On February 9, 2017, David Gordon Green and Danny McBride were announced as handling screenwriting duties, with Green directing and Carpenter advising the project. John Carpenter said that he was impressed with the pitch presented by the co-writers, solicited by Jason Blum, proclaiming that they get it. Green and McBride brought along their UNCSA colleague Jeff Bradley to co-write the script alongside them for their 2018 film, Halloween.
Say something. Say something, Michael. Say something!
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor here along with Chris, and today we are continuing the Halloween franchise with the 2018 reboot or requel with the same name, Halloween. So being the third film in the franchise with the simple name as Halloween. This I remember coming into this, and I heard they were making a new Halloween, or like had something in production, and you always hear these things down the line, or read it on the internet, or get some type of announcement, and it's like, okay, well, we've done this before. The coming off of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, it'd been almost a decade since we got a Halloween film, so of course I was ready for it. And you hear that Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back and John Carpenter is coming back to do the score, and so you start getting all these little hints, and I started getting really excited about it. And when the trailer dropped for this film, I instantly like went bananas and was like ready for this film. I like had little goosebumps, and I was ready. It felt like a throwback to the original, and like it made it seem like this is going to be one more film for Michael and Laurie to duke it out to the end. And I ended up seeing this in theaters. I loved it in theaters, and I feel like every time I watch it now, I some films, like, you like it at first, and the more you watch it, there's things that you point out that you don't like about the film, or that bring the film down a little bit. Every time I watch this film, there's things about it that make me like it more and kind of raise it up my list a little bit in the franchise. And this was a phenomenal, like, re-entrance into the franchise, and I had a blast with it in theaters and on the rewatch, and every time I watched it, other than those two times, I always have fun with this one.
Yeah, I was very much in the same boat as far as the pregame goes. Very hyped for it to come out. Very glad that they were kind of doing the throwback thing. The legacy sequel, or the Lega sequel, as they like to call them on the internet. Your Jurassic World, your Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Things like that were very much like popular and in style at this time. Halloween had done something a little similar to this before, so it was just trying to give it another go. Rarely does a franchise do the full reboot and then go back to doing sequels to the original. Like, Ghostbusters did that. After Ghostbusters 2016 was a miserable failure, they went back to making just more sequels in the original timeline, but that usually that's not the common way. Usually once you go reboot, you're rebooted and you don't really ever go back. So I mean, I was super hyped for it when it came out. I was getting the trailers, the promotion, all that was good. When I saw it in theaters, I absolutely, I loved it. The whole like, oh, it feels like such a true sequel. It felt like I had so much respect and honor for the original. And but I have to say that for me, it is a little bit of the opposite of you in terms of every time I revisit this one, it kind of, I was very, very high on it when it first came out. And I was like, that was phenomenal, superb, masterpiece. But then every time I kind of go back and watch it, there's just the little things that to me, it's kind of lowered in value over time. And some of this might be because the way some of the sequels after this one went. But even this movie itself, rewatching it, it's like, yeah, it's, I don't like to say things like, oh, it was all hype and it was all nostalgia. But like in that moment when it came out, I was very, very impressed with it. But it just hasn't, something about it hasn't aged so well with me. It doesn't really hit the same, or just more of the things that it does kind of, I find more perplexing or annoying and things like that. And we'll get into it as we go on. But it was definitely a little bit of a mixed bag for me this time.
See, and there are some things with this film that do bother me, and like you said, we'll get into it. But then, like, I compare it to like what I think the film does right, such as like bringing Laurie Strode back, the the score by John Carpenter, like the portrayal of Michael Myers, the kills, like when we get into everything like that, and I look at like the positives and the negatives, like the positives are clearly outweigh any of the negatives for me in this film, like 10-1. And it's
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I just think that there's certain things, and we'll kind of talk to them. There's definitely, the nitpicks are definitely like a plenty, and some of it is just sort of over time you kind of notice what feels like I don't know, like the mode of the movie, or the vibe that the movie's going for, and it's like, oh, this is kind of like, like maybe I don't love this as much as I thought I did, but we'll have plenty of time to kind of talk about that. But there is a lot that it does exceptionally well. There's a lot to like here. It's definitely one of the stronger entries in the series. It's half of the problems are its own problems, and then the other half are kind of the trilogy that this thing sets off. So we'll kind of have to section those off as we go on.
all right. Well, we have plenty of time here. Let me give you some background on the 2018 Halloween film. So Halloween is a 2018 American slasher film directed by David Gordon Green and co-written by Green, Jeff Bradley, and Danny McBride. It is the 11th installment in the Halloween film series and a sequel to the 1978 film of the same name, while disregarding all previous sequels. The film stars Jamie Lee Curtis, who reprises her role as Laurie Strode, James Jude Courtney, who portrays Michael Myers, with Nick Castle returning for the role as a cameo. Halloween also stars Judy Greer, Andy Matichak, Will Patton, Halleck Bilginer, and Virginia Gardner. After the release of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, the 2009 sequel to the 2007 remake of the original, two consecutive follow-ups went into development from former rights holder Dimension Films, respectively, but neither came to fruition. As a result, the studio lost the rights to the intellectual property, which were later obtained by Blumhouse Production with John Carpenter's involvement. Carpenter, who disagreed with the remake's portrayal of lead killer Michael Myers, planned on helping the studio to make the next Halloween film into what he believed to be more terrifying than the preceding sequels. So filmmakers David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, who were already fans, proposed their vision to Blumhouse and Carpenter, and it was accepted and developed into the sequel to the original. Halloween 2018 was filmed from January to February in 2018 in Charleston, South Carolina, before reshoots took place that June. The film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8, 2018, and it was theatrically released in North America on October 19, 2018 by Universal Pictures. The film received generally positive reviews from critics with praise for Curtis's performance, Green's direction, scares, and tone, with many deeming it both the best Halloween film since the original and a return to form for the series. It was a box office success, being the highest grossing slasher film in unadjusted dollars, breaking a record that Scream had previously set in 1996, as well as setting several other box office records. And then Halloween 2018 was followed by two sequels with Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. So there is some background on the 2018 Halloween film.
Yeah, it was definitely sort of, in very much the way that Jurassic World and Star Wars peaked when they first returned. This was really that moment for Halloween, that sort of generational horror icon getting to come back and kind of pull blockbuster numbers, even though it was just like a modest horror film. It got to have that cultural moment, which was really nice to see as a longtime fan.
Well, and then one of the things I think that even for like if for Halloween fans, I think this is a mixed bag, or if they didn't like this Halloween film, like one thing that it did for the horror community was, I think the trailer that they shot for this was very effective. Like and then you add the names Jamie Lee Curtis and like John Carpenter into the trailer, and like fans see that, and the trailer it gave away quite a bit. There's some scares in there that it gave away and things like that. But I think the trailer they did a very good job at it, and it just locked people in and showed them like, ooh, like this is going to be a fun ride. This is going to be an exceptional Halloween film compared to the last few that we've gotten. So it just boomed on like its first opening weekend, and even a couple weeks after that it still did well. But I think the trailer is a lot of the success for this film.
Yeah, absolutely. It was well marketed, and like I said, in this sort of time frame, that sort of go back to the original classic and make something that feels like a follow up to the original classics. That was very much in vogue. You could have not seen Jurassic Park 2 and 3 and only see the original, then watch Jurassic World. You could have only seen the original trilogy and then watch Star Wars. But then they were even presented in ways where it's like, where even if you were a new fan who hadn't seen the original, as long as you had that sort of vague overall awareness of the basics of it, you could go into those new entries as a fresh fan. So it was like this new moment where there was a lot of nostalgic fans going to see it, and then a lot of people jumping on board because, hey, if you want to see this new Halloween movie, like at most there's one movie you have to watch, and you don't even necessarily have to watch that movie. And so it was a big moment for the nostalgic adults and fans to kind of bring on board some new fans and new people and newcomers as well. And so that's why all three of those ended up being so huge relative to their franchises, because they were that sort of fresh start moment, but that also wasn't abandoning the old stuff. So you had the old fans as well as a new generation of fans giving it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this was when I went to this, I believe I went on opening night in the theater, and it was a packed theater, and it was a blast. I went with a buddy, and he hadn't really seen a lot of the Halloween films, and like you said, you didn't really have to. You had to know the basis of the original or have seen the original film, and then kind of come into this one. And he did, and he had a great time and liked it, and it was fun to experience this film with the crowds. And the only two I had seen in theaters before this were Halloween Resurrection, which the crowd was probably 2/3 full, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which there weren't. I mean, that might have been half a theater. There wasn't a lot. And then I came into this one, and it was packed. I don't think there was a open seat that night, and it was a phenomenal experience for a Halloween film.
Yeah, I got to see I'm pretty sure when I saw the flashback cinema showing of the original, it was before this one came out, if my memory serves me right. So I got to see that one in basically an empty theater. Those flashback cinema screenings are always just like, maybe a dozen or two people tops. That's their specialty screenings. But this one was the first proper new release that I got to see in the theater, and it was packed because I took someone opening weekend, and it wasn't a fun experience because of how they reacted to the movie. They had like a borderline like panic attack at one of the violent scenes, and I was like, "Oh, great!" Like, what a buzzkill, like so, like they had to leave. I'm like, "All right, like it's just a movie. Like, handle yourself like an adult. Like, you're not 12. I don't know. That's mean, but it's like really, like you got to like excuse yourself from a scary movie. Like, oh my gosh, it was pretty frustrating, but the theater was packed and it was a fun movie to watch.
That's coming from two people that we grew up on horror movies at a very young age. Not
Yeah, but
everybody got
this
that.
same person had seen it in 2017 in a theater, and that didn't seem to scar them or anything. So I don't know. I'm like, all right, whatever.
I don't know. Maybe it's it's kind of it's a little more far out there in the imagination, and you think that a knife wielding masked killer that could be something that
I
comes to your back door
suppose.
someday.
I suppose some people are just have weak constitutions, I imagine.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get into a trailer for Halloween? We'll get a plot synopsis read off, and we'll come back and dive into some numbers, fun facts, and get into our favorite categories on the film.
Sounds good.
Testing 1, 2, 3. We're on.
We're here to investigate a patient that killed 3 innocent teenagers on a Halloween in 1978. He was shot by his own psychiatrist and taken into custody that night, and has spent the last 40 years in captivity. Hello, Michael. I have something you might like to see.
Everyone in my family turns into a nutcase this time of year. Yeah, I mean, your grandmother is Laurie Strode. She was almost murdered.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
Dad, look out!
The bus crashed.
Mom, what bus crash?
Michael escaped.
Excuse me, somebody's in here.
Hello?
He's waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him.
Get out! Go home! Get inside!
You don't believe in the boogeyman?
He's here!
Michael! You should.
Can you close the closet door?
On October 29, 2018, infamous serial killer Michael Myers, who has been institutionalized at Smiths Grove Psychiatric Hospital for 40 years following his killing spree in Haddonfield, is being prepared for transfer to a maximum security prison. True crime podcasters Aaron Corey and Dana Haynes visit the hospital, where Aaron displays Michael's mask to him to no effect. In Haddonfield, Laurie Strode lives in fear of him, drinking heavily and rarely leaving her heavily fortified house. She has a strained relationship with her daughter Karen, whom the state took away from her when Karen was 12. Allison, Laurie's granddaughter, tries to maintain a relationship with her grandmother. The night of October 30th, as Michael is being transferred, the bus crashes and Michael escapes after murdering 2 people and stealing their truck. On the morning of October 31st, Michael sees Aaron and Dana visiting his sister Judith's grave. He kills them both, as well as a mechanic for his coveralls, before recovering his mask from Aaron's car. Laurie learns of Michael's escape and attempts to warn Karen, but Karen dismisses her concerns, urging Laurie to move on. That night, Allison finds her boyfriend Cameron cheating on her at a party and leaves with his friend Oscar. Allison's best friend Vicky and her boyfriend Dave are both killed by Michael. Deputy Frank Hawkins, who arrested Michael in 1978, and Laurie overhear the incident on the radio and go over to the house. Laurie sees Michael for the first time in 40 years and shoots him before he flees. The police take Laurie, Karen, and her husband Ray to Laurie's home for protection. Dr. Ranbir Sartain, Michael's psychiatrist and former student of Dr. Loomis, persuades Sheriff Barker to help him in the hunt for Michael. Michael kills Oscar, but Hawkins and Sartain rescue Allison. Deputy Hawkins incapacitates Michael and tries to kill him, but Dr. Sartain, who has become obsessed with Michael, attacks and leaves Hawkins for dead. It is revealed that he orchestrated Michael's escape to study him in the wild. Dr. Sartain heads towards Laurie's home with an unconscious Michael and Allison locked in the back seat together. Michael wakes up and kills Sartain while Allison flees. Michael then kills the 2 police officers stationed outside Laurie's home and strangles Ray to death. In Michael's showdown with Laurie, he stabs her and pushes her over a balcony. When he goes to check her body, he finds it missing, reminiscent of their first encounter decades earlier. Karen shoots him in the cheek before Laurie traps him inside the safe room with Karen and Allison's help. The trio sets the house ablaze, and Laurie says goodbye to Michael before she faints. As her family takes her to the hospital, and a final shot of the burning basement is shown, with Michael nowhere in sight. In a post-credits scene, Michael's breathing is heard, indicating that he has survived. Alright, how about we jump into some numbers here? So Halloween 2018 had a budget of $10 million with a box office gross of $259.9 million. So what are those for our inflation numbers here in 2025?
Yeah, that budget would be about 12.8 million today, and that box office would be a nice 333.8 million today. So, it'd be up a little bit, but it's still kind of in that range where it's like more or less the same. But funny that it ended at 259.9, like it couldn't just scrape together that last bit to get to 260 even,
And I mean, those are big numbers for this film. You multiply your budget by pretty much 26 times. And I was super excited when I found out this film was doing good, because as soon as the opening weekend of this film was over, I believe they started talking about possibility of sequels and shooting 2 sequels back to back. And
yes, I remember the sad sort of what I think is a tragic thing, that it was initially the big thing was like it was going to be this and one sequel. It was going to be Halloween and Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends. It was a 2-part thing that they kind of pitched. And I was like, ooh, that's exciting. That's interesting. I'm up for it. And then when this one was so huge, then it became a trilogy. And that's a more lengthy discussion for other podcasts. But I ultimately think that was an absolutely disaster idea. But yes, I remember when it was going to be 1 sequel, and then they saw dollar signs, so they decided it would be 2 sequels. And I think that's to the detriment of the story.
And I have, from the comments and things I have read, a lot of other Halloween fans agree with you that there's a middle chapter in this trilogy that is an unneeded film that, like you said, they saw a dollar sign.
Well, I disagree with the idea that it's specifically the middle chapter. I have more of an issue with why did the sequel need. Well, we will get to it. The middle chapter is not the bad chapter of this trilogy. That's all I will say.
Well, not Halloween Kills per se, but like they could have ended, like you said, in 2 films. Like they didn't have to stretch it out.
Yeah, it should have been 2 films across in taking place in one night, and there just would have been ways to truncate a lot of what we didn't need and finish this off in a 2-part thing. They easily could have done it, but we'll get to that on another podcast.
Absolutely. I'll continue with some more numbers for you on it. So Halloween is a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. It is rated a 79% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a 67% rating on Metacritic, and 80% of Google users liked this film. So all around, we got some pretty good numbers for our critics and fans as well.
Yeah, it was definitely well received when it came out. It definitely made that big splash, that big return. Everyone was happy that Halloween was back and on top again.
So, and then our 2 important numbers, as always, Michael Myers is on screen for roughly 13 minutes and 15 seconds, or about 12.2% of the film. And there are 17 deaths in the film, averaging to one death every 6.2 minutes.
That sounds about right. The numbers make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I will always welcome, like I said, Michael Myers has always been my favorite horror icon or slasher icon, whatever you want to call him. So when I was younger, I'd always compare like who has the highest kill count. So anytime that like Michael would surpass Jason in a kill count for a film or something, or like overall, it was just one of those like, yes, like he's got one more on Jason.
Yeah. I remember there was a website that would track these things. Literally every film would have like a kill count, and they would then have the running count of the franchise in terms of all the on-screen kills, and they would sometimes make notations for like if a movie mentioned like, oh, he killed 5 guys down at the police station or something, like they would include that even into the running tally. And I remember I was always irked when in Jason X they say that Jason killed like nearly 200 people or over 200 people. And I was like, I think that's a little high. I said, I don't think he's actually got that many, but I guess he's killed a bunch of people off screen between movies, So
Traveling back and forth to Crystal Lake.
I was a stickler for that stuff back in the day.
I did the same thing, and we were probably using the same website. So.
Yeah, probably.
So I'll move on to some fun facts for you here. I put quite a bit in here for us. So my first one is in the child's bedroom, the rotating lamp features a clown with a knife, a nod to the first killing in the original film.
Oh, I like that.
Not sure if you caught that. I did not. So when I read this, I had to go back and check it out. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed.
I was not paying attention. That I was locked into the little smack talking kid. So
I'm pretty. I'm kind of eagle eyed when it comes to certain things. Like if I know the franchise well and I know the material really well, the little stuff jumps out at me.
And there's a bunch of them in this film. There's a bunch of nods to other films and things like that. There's a lot of fan service.
Yeah, they turned the song that Jamie Lee Curtis basically improvised in the original Halloween, and they turned it into a proper song for the radio in this movie as if it was a song in the Halloween universe. I loved that detail.
I did catch that, and that's a fun little nod. And most people aren't going to catch that. They're not going to remember that song that she sang for 15 seconds in the original film.
Yeah,
But
and
us
I always
diehards,
wondered as a kid if that was a real song, and it's wild to hear that it wasn't, and then now they were able to turn it into a song for this movie. That's fun.
absolutely. On the TV, a newscaster can be heard describing the events of the original film as the Babysitter Murders. This was the title Carpenter originally wanted for the 1978 film Halloween. It was only changed after producer Irwin Yablans thought up the idea to have it released near Halloween. And it was also mentioned in an earlier scene with Officer Hawkins and the sheriff.
Yeah, that's a fun nod. Again, that's one of those things. It's like you do a Godzilla movie and you have characters arguing over if it's pronounced Gojira or Godzilla. It's like you got to kind of do those kind of like mythos references,
Yeah, that was one of those things in theaters where he's like Michael Myers Babysitter Murders 1978. I was in theaters doing the ooh, there it is. There.
Yeah. And in a world where none of the events of the franchise have happened since the original, it would very much be remembered and known as the Babysitter Murders because it was just that one night and those were the primary victims. It's not like Michael's done it 5 more times and has killed many people outside of babysitters. So in this lore, in this context, just like if they had only made it one movie and called it the Babysitter Murders and not turned it into a franchise, it would have been an appropriate title.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I am glad though we still have Halloween because it's one of my favorite holidays and it's a kick-ass title for a horror film.
Of course, it's iconic.
So this became the highest grossing Halloween film in its opening weekend. So this, again, we've said before, this film did box office big numbers.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, that goes that. I mean, we all know that.
There's a reason we have 2 sequels.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
At about 59 and a half minutes in, a trio of children can be seen together wearing a skeleton mask, a witch mask, and a jack-o'-lantern mask. They are nearly identical to the masks in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch from 1982, in which the Silver Shamrock Company's masks are the driving plot device. So that was a phenomenal. I loved that. I seen that
Yeah.
little clip in the trailer, and I was
In
just like, oh,
yeah.
they're doing stuff here.
In fact, if you watch the credits of the movie, they credit those masks as being from Halloween 3 and like as like copyright Universal Studios. You see that in the end of the movie, in the end of the credits of the movie. So it is literally those masks.
I've watched the credits, like, and I never caught that. I mean, I've let the
Yeah.
movie play through. I guess I
Yeah, it's
wasn't.
something it's like near the very end, it's like you see it scrolling and it's like Halloween masks, Halloween 3, something something Universal. It's like, "Oh wow, they're getting credit just for having the masks in there."
I loved that. I love that they brought those back. I mean, again, more fan service that, the fans are gonna love to see that.
Yeah. I don't need references to Halloween 3, but that's okay. That's okay. It's a fun nod.
Halloween 3 is, Chris's Godzilla versus King Ghidorah.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. I mean, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah is a better Godzilla movie than Halloween 3 is a Halloween movie. Halloween 3 is like my All Monsters Attack or something like that, or my Friday the 13th Part 5.
Ouch.
Oh, come on. We all know that doesn't, it's not, we'll
I
save it. Save it.
save it for the ranking
It
episode.
doesn't belong. It doesn't belong in the franchise.
My next one for you here is that Halloween 2018 was the biggest horror movie opening with a female lead and the biggest movie opening with a female lead over 55, biggest opening for any of the Halloween films, and it was also the second biggest horror opening ever after It 2017. And then lastly, it was also the second biggest October opening ever after the film Venom.
Jamie Lee Curtis got her senior citizen opening weekend prize.
Many things that Michael did in Halloween 1978, Laurie does in this film. Michael is shot off of a balcony in the original, but upon inspection, his body disappears. In this new film, Laurie is thrown from a balcony by Michael, but when he checks her body, she has disappeared. In the original, Michael found Laurie hiding inside a wardrobe closet, and in this new version, Laurie thinks Michael is hiding inside of a wardrobe closet, only he is not. Laurie also appears from the shadow behind Michael with only her face lit up in the newer version, just as Michael did to her in the original. And then finally, Laurie stands outside of school looking from across the street, just like Michael did to her in 1978.
Yeah, and that's a mixed bag. I like the closet one, and I like the standing outside the school, but I always thought it was a little much to do the like, oh, she's in the yard, and then Michael looks back and she's gone. It's like, we'll get into this a little bit more, but it's like Laurie Strode is a senior citizen woman at this point. Like, I'm all for Laurie Strode being a tough, cool cookie character, but some stuff does strain believability a little bit, and like her sort of superheroine-esque resilience in the final act of this movie is one of those that I'm just like, all right, come on. Like, Michael Myers absolutely decimates everybody he comes into contact with, but because Laurie Strode has the resolve of a survivor, she's somehow able to, like, it goes a bit much for me. And yes, Michael's old too, but Michael hasn't seemed to lost a step, and he's always been supernatural. And like when you play the gag of like, oh, her face is illuminated behind Michael, like, in my opinion, some of that stuff like gets a little annoying and it goes a little far. Like, a little bit of it's a little fun, but some of it's like, all right, guys, like, what are we doing here? That's just me. That's just me. I'm sure everyone else loves
I
it.
I do like I like how it's played in the film. I know that some of it's a little far fetched, but I do like the fan service and the callbacks. But I do understand that, like you said, like Michael looking back and then him looking back at the ground where Laurie was and she's gone. Like, clearly it's just fan service. Like you said, she was in her 60s in this, I believe. So I mean, it's not like she's gonna be up and sprinting, running around after she just got stabbed in the stomach and thrown off of a balcony. But they're making it fun for the fans, and I can appreciate it for that.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just that one's that one's the one where I'm like, that's a bit much. But the other ones are perfectly valid.
Absolutely. I agree with you on the other ones. My next one for you here is to achieve the intro sequence of the pumpkin rising back up. Director David Gordon Green revealed that a normal pumpkin was placed in front of a camera over a period of a few weeks until it rotted and slumped down, and the footage was then reversed and edited properly for the title sequence to give it the illusion that the pumpkin was rising back up on its own.
Which I absolutely loved. I absolutely loved that opening. I love the opening in general of the movie and those opening credits. I love how vintage it feels. I love, like, I even would have maybe gone a little bit farther than like throw in some like fake movie grain over the titles to make it look like real vintage, or maybe try and actually make the titles like they're digital made to look analog. Would have been cool if they had done them like the proper traditional way. But I love that shot of the pumpkin was actual footage and not some kind of like CGI pumpkin morphing thing. They actually used like time lapse footage and played it in reverse and did like an actual sort of practical thing for it. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, I love what they do with the opening credits in this film, and I mean, when we get to the next two films as well, I like the opening credits that they do in all three of the films in this trilogy. I think this one, they go. This one reminds you of the night they tried to keep it as close as they could to the credits from the 1978 film. And then the next two kind of go with Halloween 2 and then the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch credits. Like it's a fun thing that they did, and I definitely like the pumpkin rising back up, kind of symbolizing that the Halloween franchise is rising back to life.
Yeah, that it was being restored, so to speak.
Absolutely. Actor James Jude Courtney, who plays Michael Myers in this film, consulted with real life killers on how to kill people to make his performance believable. In his own words, Michael has been locked up for 40 years, so he's had a long time to think about killing. But obviously, he's still efficient and driven, so I wanted to make sure people see that in my performance.
Yeah, and I think it's a great performance as Michael. While we're on that note, I think he did a really really good job.
I 100% agree with you. He, I think he did a top notch job in this, and I mean, I love the way he moves. I love everything about the Michael performance in this. I I appreciated, and to learn that James Jude Courtney was as old as he was doing this, and pretty much doing most of the stunts himself and things like that. I thought it was great. It makes it that much more fun.
And I think this film struck a good balance between wanting to keep Michael sort of imposing and intimidating in sort of stature and size, but without making him kind of like a hulking giant. Not going like full Jason with him. I thought this struck it a little well. That it's like he's a bigger guy, but he doesn't seem sort of larger than life or impossibly huge or like superhuman in stature. So I kind of liked that.
Exactly, absolutely agree with you. So I got three more for you here, and this is distributed by Universal Pictures, and it is their first involvement with the Halloween franchise since distributing Halloween 2 in 1981 and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch in 1982.
Yeah. So for the OCD people that like all of the movies to belong with one studio or one rights holder or whatever, this is now like an annoying thing where 2 and 3 were with Universal, then none of the others were, and then now these 3 new ones are with Universal. So it'll just irk people forever.
Well, Universal, I think when they heard the pitch for this and everything, I think they saw dollar signs as well. So
Yeah, well, and I believe it was because they have a deal with because Blumhouse is kind of the ones that got it, and I think Universal's distribution deal was with Blumhouse. So whatever Blumhouse was putting out, Universal was getting like they're the distributing arm for it. So when they got Halloween, it just so happened to be that like, okay, yeah, you're the Blumhouse is next to Halloween. Just like Warner Brothers with Legendary. Legendary got Godzilla and the MonsterVerse, and Warner Brothers just happened to be the studio they were with at the time.
well, it seems to be that Blumhouse is they're taking over everything in the horror genre recently.
It was a
So
10-year stretch there where they were it was only Blumhouse. They were like how A24 kind of is now. That's what Blumhouse was for a stretch, but like a bit more mainstream and bigger.
yeah, they were definitely knocking it out of the park here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So my next one for you is when Allison is walking with her friends in the beginning, Dave says to her that her family should just put up a Christmas tree on Halloween. And when Lori and the police come to her daughter's house to take them to safety on Halloween night, Karen is wearing a Christmas sweater. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, yeah, I know, and she continues to wear that, and I did think that was like kind of a nice touch that they're celebrating Christmas on Halloween as like a protest of Halloween. That's a fun one.
Yeah, straight from 4th of July and all that Labor Day weekend, and we're gonna skip Halloween.
Hmm.
So I thought this was interesting because I had talked, I think we talked about this before, and I had talked with a buddy of mine about this when we talked about Halloween films. This is the first Halloween film to be released in October since Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers in 1989.
That shouldn't be a thing. That the fact that the Halloween movies are released anywhere outside of October is absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. I get going for like a late August, but like, in what world are you not dropping these movies routinely like 1-2 weeks before Halloween? That's just how it should be.
Well, I know both the Rob Zombies, I think, were August. Halloween Resurrection was like July. So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's called Halloween. Like, yes, Halloween night is a bad night for movie going. As someone who was a manager of a theater for years, everyone's out trick or treating on Halloween night. Very few people are actually going to the movies on Halloween night. You would think, oh, go see scary movies. Yeah, the scary movies get a little bit of play, but generally speaking, Halloween night is one of those nights where people are doing other things and not going to the movies because they're going to parties or trick or treating or what have you, or it's on a school night even. So it's one of those things. But for a movie called Halloween, you don't want to open it right at Halloween, of course, but the weekend before, give or take, would always be the best idea. And I'm sure there's evidence that the films that are maybe opened in October kind of are a little stronger than the other ones. All these modern, Resurrection and the two Rob Zombie movies were in August, and how did they really perform? Versus this one brought it back to October, and look at how it performed. Not that that was everything, but clearly, I think, a factor. You've got a movie called Halloween, you want to bring it out close to Halloween. That only makes sense.
I absolutely agree with you. And I mean, I'm on that. I'm on that bandwagon as well. I mean, release it in the middle of October. October 15th, 16th, 17th. Give us 2 weekends before Halloween, and maybe once word of mouth gets around or something, then you'll start having the couples going to date night to see this on Halloween or something. Help
Exactly. Yeah,
somehow.
if there's any movie that will perform well on Halloween night or above average compared to most of the other movies, it would be a movie called Halloween.
Exactly. So not having what the last there's roughly there's four or five films that in a row that weren't released in October. So I mean it, and the only one that's really successful out of those, I would say, with everything, critics and box office and everything, probably was H2O.
Yeah, agreed.
So that is all I have for you on the fun facts section for Halloween 2018. Would you like to dig in and tell me who your favorite character was in this film?
Yeah, I mean, by kind of crushing default, I'd actually have to say it was Allison. I I'm not a huge fan of the portrayal of Laurie Strode overall in this movie. And I guess now's as good of a time as ever. But my kind of issue with it is that I think that Halloween H2O kind of handled the sort of trauma, stress, PTSD side of it in a better way than this one, in that it felt a bit more grounded, especially considering that in this one, only the events of the original film happened. Yet the way Laurie Strode is and the way she's living would have you think that this is a Laurie Strode that survived the events of Halloween 1, 2, H2O, and Resurrection, and is like now driven to like be a recluse. It's like, I feel like the way they have Laurie Strode in this movie is almost like some nod to the whole franchise in this weird way, as opposed to kind of thinking like, well, what would the realistic portrayal be of someone that only had survived that original night and that was all that happened? I feel like they lay it on pretty thick in terms of her paranoia and trauma and her PTSD and all that for 40 years later after one night she went like full Captain Ahab, like just full it's not impossible, but when we see the sort of measured way that it was handled in H2O, this feels like a very extreme portrayal, and it's twice as much time removed from an event that was, compared to Halloween and Halloween 2, an event that was half as devastating in a sense, so and then you take away that it was, it was a stranger, it wasn't her brother, so there's no like weird family trauma. So again, it's like I'm not a huge fan of how thick they went with Laurie's trauma and PTSD and paranoia in this movie. So I preferred the young new protagonist of Allison in this movie.
I did like Allison. I mean, I liked her character. I liked her friend Vicky as well. And I ended up going because I agree with you. I do like the portrayal of Laurie Strode in Halloween H2O better, and I think it's more realistic. And I think I said that in our episode is why she was my favorite character, and that is because her PTSD and the way it's handled in that film. It's realistic. Like she still has the trauma, but she's still living a normal life. And then in this film, like Laurie Strode is just a recluse, and like she doesn't really get out. She practices like shooting and preparing for Michael, and that's about it. And I mean, I agree with you on that, but I did go with Laurie because Jamie Lee Curtis comes back in like this triumphant film, and I just I like that she is damaged, but she can still play it and give the emotion. And it's Laurie Strode. I mean, she was like the first final girl I had ever seen. So I guess there's some nostalgia there and stuff. And like her coming back, it like in theaters like kind of gave me goosebumps. So I ended up going with her. But I do think it's a little unrealistic how far they took it, especially with like her house being like this like lockdown prison where like every time she sweeps a room she has the door that comes down and seals, and it's a little unrealistic and crazy, but I like the way that she just kind of like goes all out and she does it. I mean, I think she does a phenomenal job in that character, so I ended up going with Laurie Strode, even though I think Allison's a phenomenal choice by you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like Laurie Strode in this movie was, even though she experienced the events of only one Halloween movie, the way she's preparing for Michael, it's like she's aware that he's like a 10 movie superhuman creature. It's like, it's like disproportionate to the events that she actually saw and experienced. This is a guy who got out, killed a couple people, was apprehended that night, and has been locked up ever since. But she's treating him like, it's Satan himself that's been unleashed. And it's just like a little bit, it's like Loomis would maybe have that reaction, but with Lori, would any person who survived it go to that extent for that long? It's just one of those things where it's like laid on thick. That's all.
Like I could have seen like a combination of like this Laurie Strode with the Halloween H2O Laurie Strode. Like she's still
Yeah,
living a normal life, but like in her spare time, then she's out shooting. Like just in case, like you never know. Like she's
yeah,
paranoid about getting attacked again, so she still has the guns and things. But like having like the basement that's like set up for a trap and things like that. Like what is she doing for a job to like afford all this crazy stuff in her house and all these traps and doors? Like
yeah.
it goes a little wild.
And she's so paranoid to the extent that like Child Protective Services takes her daughter away. Like she wouldn't be a loving mother because of this. Like, it's a little bit, and I also think, there'll be other times to kind of talk about this, but that the sort of perfect continuation to Halloween would have been something of a hybrid between this and H2O. There's certain things that each one does better and worse, and like that perfect version would have been something kind of in between.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, I still chose Laurie Strode, but I mean, I do agree that the portrayal of her in this is a little far fetched compared to you know, the PTSD that she experienced in H2O that I thought was a little more realistic. But I've never been attacked by a math killer, so I mean, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, agreed there.
So I'll go ahead and give you my favorite score for the film, and John Carpenter, he came back and delivered just one of the best film scores I've heard for a horror film, and especially for this Halloween franchise, I think. And my favorite one of the film, of course, I loved the opening titles, but I ended up going with Ray's Goodbye because the shape stalks theme that we get is just, I think it's phenomenal, and it's played a couple times in this film when Michael attacks Vicky when she's babysitting, and then when Ray finds the two police officers dead in the police car and gets attacked. And I just think the added little tones and the upped bass that we get in that, and it's a modernized track of the shape stalks, and I think it's phenomenal, and when I hear it, it gives me chills, and it gets me ready for like the final climax and battle of the film. So that's the one I chose, and Ray's Goodbye was the one for me in this film.
Yeah, I went with the shape hunts Allison. That's the one that I went with, which is probably, I'm sure, it's another sort of shape theme, but that's the one that I went with that kind of like jumped out at me. And yes, John Carpenter coming back to compose this movie is one of the elements that it has that makes it much better than Halloween H2O. And I would have, in a perfect world, I would have loved to have seen Carpenter come back and score that movie. But he does a great job here to sort of keep that sort of essence and spirit of the original and to kind of be involved, even if he's not sort of writing, directing it, or anything like that. So I enjoyed that.
And that was a phenomenal track as well. Some of the, I mean, the classic Halloween themes in this film are, like I said, they're a little modernized, and they sound amazing. But some of the new tracks we get, especially that one that you just mentioned, that is gonna go down as one of the all time probably best tracks in the Halloween franchise, because that's a phenomenal soundtrack and score for the film. So, and I mean, anyone who's listening to this, they know what one we're talking about. So
Yeah,
that is
Carpenter
a
didn't
great.
hold back. Carpenter did not hold back.
No, he knocked this one out of the park for sure. So, what was your favorite quote, or did you have some memorable lines that you liked from the film?
So I actually, leave it to Sam Loomis to get a monologue in a movie he's not even alive for, but I had to go with it. And it's when they're playing a recording of Loomis, and he says, "My suggestion is termination. Death is the only solution for Michael. There's nothing to be gained by keeping evil alive. A shot of sodium thiopental would render him unconscious. I'll be with him to make sure his life is extinguished. My ear on his chest to hear for myself that his vitals no longer function and immediately incinerate the body. It needs to die, it needs to die, it needs to die." And they have the sort of audio distorting at the end to sort of make it seem like to just elevate Loomis to like this like screaming spirit, it needs to die kind of a thing. And for me, like that's the most potent dialogue in the entire film.
That was absolutely one of the ones I had chose, and I was watching this last night, kind of a refresher before we ended up recording, and I don't know if I forgot about that part or didn't catch it on my last viewing of it, but I knew that that was in there. But like last night when I was watching it, it just jumped out at me, and I was like, "Ooh, that might be the one." And it was definitely one of them. And then the only other one I chose that I liked came from Laurie Strode, and it was just, he's waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him. And it's just like, it makes you, if you didn't know that sequels were coming for this film, you think you're getting this final showdown for Michael and Laurie, like one last time, and we're finally gonna get an epic like conclusion to this franchise. And that, I mean, that quote right there was in the trailer, and it was just one of those that jumped out me and made me ready for the film. Like that line right there is what got me like 10 times more hyped for the film than I originally was. So that's one of the ones I went with.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that could have been really cool that they could have done was to sort of imply, because Loomis was someone who was very much uh attuned to what Michael was or how evil he was, or at least he had his mind made up. So it would have been interesting if they'd kind of leaned into the idea that after the events of the first Halloween, maybe it was Loomis that sort of like hammered it into Laurie, like what he was, and like like if they'd sort of detailed a dynamic that they had had, or a relationship that they'd had, in terms of like him really letting her know like he's evil, he needs to die. It wasn't, to kind of elevate the status of Michael in her mind, to kind of explain a little bit more of why she's having such this enormous reaction. It's like, well, it wasn't just a random guy who attacked me. Like, this doctor studied him for 15 years, and like he went to his death, he went to his grave, like telling me, like warning me about how evil he was and all this stuff. So maybe, maybe they could have leaned into that a little bit, and it would have made Laurie's, her situation seem a bit more believable, and create kind of more conflict with her family, because then her family could kind of like throw it at her like, you just believe what that crazy old doctor was saying, like you let him convince you that this guy was, the boogeyman, and it's just a guy, like they could have leaned into that a little bit, and then it would have been, it kind of would have made it feel a little bit less like an extreme reaction from Laurie 40 years later.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could definitely have seen them doing something like that, and it's just, it's one of these things to where like I like that they included things from Dr. Loomis. I mean, even any fan of the franchise knows that he's gone, and like this isn't his voice, but it's like it's just fun that they do things like this. They keep the legacy of that character going, and like I agree with you that if they did something like that, it would have been fun. Like he like Dr. Loomis, he imprinted on Laurie Strode and like pretty much made her paranoid of this serial killer or Michael Myers. So that's why she is the way she is 40 years later.
Yeah, the idea that he sort of mentored her psychosis a little bit, and but yeah, and yeah, so I mean, that could have totally worked, and they could have leaned into the lore a little bit there.
So for favorite scene, I did I had two that I was battling back and forth between, which was I'll give one and I'll let you mention one after, so I don't spoil one if either one of these is yours. But I did like the scene where Michael attacks Vicky. He's kind of, because we get the little kid Julian. He's a smart ass. He's really quippy in this film, cracking jokes, and he was one of the ones that if I wanted to, I could have thought of a couple quotes from him, like where he says that if he had a real babysitter, he wouldn't be staying up late cutting my nasty ass toenails and all this stuff. Like he was good comic relief in this film. And then he asks Vicky to close the closet door because he thinks he's seeing someone in his closet. And she tries to close the door and it won't close. And this scene was in the trailer, so it kind of spoiled it, and she opens it and gets attacked by Michael, and that's when you originally hear the new updated The Shape Stalks theme. And it kind of annoyed me because she was one character in this I didn't want to die, because she was just, clearly she's a babysitter though, so she's got to be attacked. Babysitters in these films are very expendable, so but I just like the whole scene where she kind of just goes up there thinking everything's innocent. She gets attacked, and Michael kind of handles his business, and she's screaming and telling Julian to run, and she kind of sacrifices herself for Julian in a way. I mean, not fully, but she ends up getting killed, and it's just I think it's a good scene with a nice little jump scare where Michael comes out of the closet and attacks her, right after we get all the comic relief from Julian. So it was a nice little scene to get back to the tension of the film.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great sequence, and they even play it up like when she first goes in, she's like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Like they play it up like it's gonna be an attack, and then it's not there. I love the moment where he's like, "Send Dave first," like, you know. Um, I my favorite, I've kind of got two runners here, so maybe after you give your second one, maybe I'll have kind of a bonus one. But I love the tracking shot of the shape as he's going through and sort of and we're just following along with him as he's kind of taking out victim after victim. Some people say that it makes Michael look a little bit too much like he's on a random rampage. Like that's not the way he was doing it in the original. The original, he was sort of like picking and choosing people that he seemed to want to stalk and fixate on. But this is an older Michael that's kind of maybe been itching for violence for a long time, and maybe like he's being set off by being back on the prowl again, and so like I am generally a fan of the sort of tracking shot and the sequence that just kind of follows him along as he bashes the one lady's head in the kitchen, and then like comes up with the other lady and stabs her through the neck. Like I'm a fan of that sequence.
Yeah, and it's like a 2-minute tracking shot or something like that, and it's got to be close to a minute and a half, 2 minutes long, and it reminds you of the tracking shot that they did in the beginning of the original Halloween.
Yes.
So I love that callback, and that is a phenomenal scene. It's it's the first time we get Michael Myers back in Haddonfield on Halloween, and full get up. He's got the mask, he's got everything he needs. He comes in, kills a lady with a hammer, like you said, and
Yeah,
heads to the next door.
just play some AC/DC Back in Black. Like
But it was just it was a phenomenal shot because we're finally here, and we're getting Michael back in Haddonfield on Halloween, something we'd been waiting for throughout the film. So that
yeah,
was a phenomenal one.
it plays up the weird dynamic. It's like, are we supposed to be cheering when Michael kills somebody?
Well, I thought there was one point he had already killed a younger kid in this film. That is the first time we'd seen that in the Halloween franchise.
Which I thought was an odd departure because, like in H2O, he just takes the car and leaves the mom and her daughter there, and I thought we were going to get a situation more like that where he was just going to get in the truck and drive away, but they went that extra mile.
They did, and I know he was chasing his niece and stuff in the earlier films, but that isn't in continuity in this film. So we get him walking past the living room, and you hear the baby cry. And in theaters, I was like,
Mm,
"There's no way."
yeah, yeah,
And of course, Michael doesn't kill the baby. He just walks out the front door, and it's like, okay, like because if you would have went to some extent like that, people probably would have walked out of the theater. And I was just that was my
yeah.
first
That would have
thought in
been
theaters.
that
Is
that
there's
would have
no
been
way.
quite extreme. That would have been quite extreme. But I do like the idea that, like, just to add the tension of getting you to think about it, like that's effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely thought about it in theaters. Like, there's no way they're going to take it this far, and he's going to do that. But my other one for you was, of course, the Michael and Laurie showdown at the house, and it goes from when they kind of lock eyes as at right after Michael kills Ray, and they lock eyes through the front door of Laurie's house, and Laurie kind of locks the door. Michael breaks through. He's grabbing her, and she shoots off his hands. And from there on out, the battle and like the tension that they have, where they're kind of like hiding from each other and looking for each other, and all the way up until the end of the film, where the house is like up in flames, and Michael's looking up at her from the basement and seems to be unbothered that the entire house is going up in flames. He's just locked in on Laurie Strode, like looking at her like, what, I'm gonna get you. Like he's just cued in. And I love that final shot of him in the flames just looking up at her. So that whole final showdown was a sequence in the film that was like second to none. It's tied right up there with when he attacks Vicky earlier on in the film.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I want to give a shout out to the sort of opening scene where there's this sort of like it's almost giving like this elemental energy to Michael when the mask is brought out and the guy's saying, say something, and all the other sort of mental patients are kind of like getting all bothered and flustered and riled up, just almost just like there's like an aura and energy in the scene, like that they can just like feel the presence of Michael and the mask and this sort of awakening, and it's almost like on this mythic level, and then you smash cut to the title. It's like that's a heck of an opening scene. We talked a little bit about the opening titles and everything, but like that's a good opening scene that sets the stage well.
Yeah, absolutely. Was that your
Yeah, that was
honorable
my other
mention?
mention. Yeah, that was my honorable mention.
I did want to point out like a certain shot of Michael that like just every time I see it in this film, it's just it like hits hard. It's after he kills the podcasters and gets his mask and he closes the trunk and it kind of just like freezes on him standing behind the trunk for a second. He had just put on his mask and it's like that is such an awesome shot, like
Mhm.
like showing us that Michael's back, he's got his mask, and it's like this is one of those films in the Halloween
Back in the
franchise.
saddle again.
It's just awesome. There's so many good like little shots of him in this film standing in the shadows or things like that, like when he's standing behind Oscar at Mr. Elrod's, and of course that's a nod to Mr. Elrod from Halloween 2, and it's like
Mhm.
there's just so many good shots in this film that I appreciate.
Mhm. Indeed. Indeed.
So what was your favorite kill or death scene in Halloween 2018?
I'd have to say it would be the crushing the head of Dr. Sartan or Sartine under Michael's boot, and the whole time the doctor saying, say something, I thought it was a pretty kind of like lame and unnecessary twist that this doctor was somehow like a mad doctor and that he was sort of like semi obsessed with Michael and getting him to speak and protecting him and stuff like that. Like, I think that was a bridge too far. I think that was like a wrinkle into the movie. Like, if you're like in the way that it's introduced and dispatched so quickly, it felt like why even bother to have it? Why not just have Michael have a doctor that he kills? And it just it seemed like something like that, like the mad doctor obsessed with the monster, so to speak. Like, I feel like that's something that sort of warrants more screen time and more real estate in the movie. And so it felt like they wanted to do it, but then they wanted to make it as short and quick as possible. And so I'm not a fan of that whole weird subplot, but I do like that kill a lot, and it's a very satisfying death.
And what's crazy is I chose that same exact kill just for the special effects of the head stomping. And
Yeah,
I
you
was
don't get
gonna
a lot
ask
of stuff
you,
like head crushes these days.
yeah, I don't I don't know what it is. I like things like that. And you got one in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, but it's not as simple and gory as this one. In that film, it's he we get like 4 or 5 stomps and then we see the afterwards of the head being crushed, and in this one it's just one stomp and the back of his head explodes from the power of the stomp. So I thought that was a phenomenal special effect, and I liked that this guy's been trying to like figure out like I feel like he's been trying to get into the mind of Michael Myers and see what he's feeling, why he kills, things like that. I mean, I believe he states somewhat that in the film, and it's like Michael doesn't care. He kills him anyway. And I was gonna ask you how you felt about the Sartan, like taking the Michael mask and putting it on and attacking Officer Hawkins, and because that's one of the downfalls for this film for me. Like
Yeah,
that's
and
one
to me,
thing that
mostly just because it felt completely unnecessary, and in some ways it's a bad omen of things to come in this trilogy, perhaps, but I'm not a fan of the sort of would be fanboyish kind of obsessed character, like putting on the mask and trying to do what their idol does. Like, I just, like that's it. Just I'm not here to tell you how many times it's been done or how many times I've seen it, but I feel like I've seen it 100 times, and I feel like it's very old and tired, and it's like it just feels like so not very original to me and just unnecessary, especially considering that it's a pretty short kind of episode in this movie. So it's like, well, why bother doing that then? If why not just not do it if you're gonna devote so little time to it? And the reason is that if you devote more time to it, then that becomes what the movie's about, and that's also bad. So it's like they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, and it's like, well, it's just kind of like dumb and unnecessary.
And I agree. I did like the the way that story led up to Michael and Laurie, though, that it wasn't just like it gave an explanation to how Michael found Laurie, and it was because of Dr. Sartan. And like it wasn't just that like Michael was stalking this one woman, he remembers her from 40 years ago, but he found her because Dr. Sartan wanted them to meet up. He wanted to see this confrontation. So I do like the way that led up to that, but I don't like the attacking of Officer Hawkins and him putting on the mask, and like I like him being the reason for Michael's escape and things like that, but then I don't like it's like a 50-50 bag for me, I guess.
Yeah, they like the execution just needed to be a little bit more reined in,
Yep, a little more fine-tuned, a little bit more editing on that portion of it.
Yeah, and I do just want to say, like, in general, like the sort of cleaning up of the lore of not making Michael Laurie's brother again, and sort of even going to the extent of making Halloween 2 have not happened. I'm generally okay with that. I really would have liked if they'd done that with H2O. I think H2O would have benefited a lot from that. But I it does take something like, when Michael and Laurie finally sort of face off at the end of H2O, it feels like this sort of epic moment that has been built up for a long time, and it's a brother and a sister, and the brother who wants to kill his sister, and it's this sort of big epic kind of a big epic grudge match. And in this movie, when you kind of strip away their connection and then you minimize what Michael's original rampage was, and you kind of just make it that it was kind of a random one night occurrence and then he was apprehended, the sort of, again, it's one of the things where the idea of Michael and Laurie going at it is sort of epic and mythic in terms of the franchise, but in terms of this specific iteration of the universe, it's not that crazy or grandiose of a battle. It's just this sort of like, you have a one-off movie where he stalked her, and then 40 years later that they cross paths again, but it's this sort of epic grudge match and rematch and things like that. So it just, again, it feels more proportionate to the franchise as a whole and a little disproportionate to the sort of more stripped down, minimalized version of the story that they have here. So that's just another small criticism I have.
Absolutely. There's different. I don't, like I said, I don't have a true problem with most of the way they did this, but there are small little winks and nods that I could have been like, I could do without that. So I mean, I agree with you, but all in all, I think I like the way they handled the going back to where Michael and Laurie aren't brother and sister, and things like that. So I mean, all in all, I think they handled it correctly. But I would have done a couple small tweaks with the plot and like the script in this film.
Indeed. And can I just point out that I think it's extremely annoying how often Allison calls Laurie grandmother in this movie? I do not understand it. Like, people, like, you say grandma. I don't know if it's a regional thing for the country, but everywhere I've always seen and heard and growing up, like, you call your grandmother grandma in conversation. And it feels like they were leaning so hard into, like, she's grandmother on her phone. Every time she talks to her mom, she's like, "Did you invite grandmother? Did you speak to grandmother? That was grandmother." Like, who talks like that? Who in the modern world speaks like that about their grandma? Even if it's like an estranged grandmother that you don't really know, you might not even call her grandmother at that point. You might just be like Ms. Laurie or something like that, or what have you. Like, but it's like, it was so weird to me that every time she would say grandmother instead of grandma, I was like, well, who on the set was like, this sounds weird? I don't know. I have to point that out.
You're reading my mind over there, because every time I watch this movie, that bothers
Yeah.
me to a T.
I'm like, golly, and it's like if it had been once, that's understandable. But it's like they were intent. Like Allison says, grandmother, not grandma. Like, oh, okay. Like, did someone say like, oh no, when it's less formal or more formal, you say grandmother, even if it's your own grandma. Like, I'm like, and again, like I was thinking, I was like, is this some weird regional thing? Like, is there a part of the country where no one says grandma, but everyone says grandmother? I'm like, if it is, this is the first time hearing of it, and I've been alive for
This
33 years.
is the first I'm hearing of it, and I don't like it.
Yeah, and I don't get it at all. Grandma exists. Like, golly, it's mind blowing to me. And and I know we're kind of wrapping it up here, but like back when we were on characters, like I said, like Allison won by crushing default because they really do a really good job in this movie making all the characters just kind of like garbage tier. And like there's a line between the sort of general like characters in horror movies aren't terribly likable because they're like drinking and smoking and partying and they're kind of just like reckless and whatnot. But like her boyfriend that like at first they seem like he's like kind of nice. It's like, okay, but then he's like a drunken a-hole. And then like even the boyfriend's best friend, who is a friend of hers, clearly very good. It's like, oh, he's secretly like a weird, creepy a-hole who's harboring feelings for her and makes a pass at her. And like the two cops in the car, like absolute doofuses. Her dad's like an absolute doofus. It's like good lord, it's like the Vicky and Dave characters were like two of the most likable characters in the movie. It's like could more of it have maybe been a bit about them, like some competent, normal, likable characters instead of like all these like either like idiots or buffoons. And it's like it's fun to have one or two characters that you're kind of waiting for them to get their comeuppance. But when like all of the characters like actively like, wow, these are garbage people, like it takes a little bit of like the thrill out of like, will they die, won't they die, are they going to make it, they're going to not make it, if you just make everyone this like kind of like loser douche idiot archetype. I'm like, it felt like this movie was like hell-bent on doing that with as many characters as possible, and I did not get it.
Well, and then I mean, Officer Hawkins I thought was a good character. The
He
sheriff
was
wasn't
good.
really in it a lot, but I liked the little that we got of him. But like I agree with you. Like most of the characters are in this, you're rooting for them to be killed in some type of way. And like Vicky and Dave, I had fun with them, and there are a couple that's, she's babysitting and they're talking about doing drugs and having sex or whatever. So like, and they're in the middle of the movie, so these two are going to be attacked and killed. So it's like you can root for them all you want, but they're going to be goners here soon. So it's like, who else do you have left to root for? Lori, Allison, and her daughter. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and and it's just it felt so, yeah, I don't know, it just felt like it felt very like extreme. Like they were like, what can we do with the time we have with and as much possible to make all of the characters or as many characters in the movie as possible either seem as dumb or unlikable or mean or idiotic as possible. And it's like, golly, it just, I don't know, it was just odd to me.
Well, and I liked the podcasters, the story they had, but you knew with them following the story of Michael Myers
Mhm.
and Laurie Strode that they were going to have to go. As soon as you seen him pull out the Myers
Yeah.
mask, it's like, oh, he's
Yeah,
a goner.
and if anything, I think it almost could have been a little more fun if they kind of leaned into keeping the two of them around a little bit more, so that you almost thought maybe they were more protagonist type characters or more central characters, and maybe you linger them around a little bit more so that when they do get killed, they, like maybe he just gets his mask from them or something and they get away or something like that, and then they go to Haddonfield. Like maybe you could have played a little bit with the like, oh, are these podcasters like primary characters or are they just cannon fodder? And if you kept them around a little bit more, maybe you get a little bit more of that going on. Like you could have had some more weight there, but you know
Absolutely agree with you. I mean, we got what we got with this film. So I mean, we can complain
yeah,
all we
and I know,
want, but
and I'm not trying to drag it down for you. I know, we're on two kind of different sides of the aisle here, so I'm not trying to just like hate on it, but it's like I'm just trying to like kind of voice the opinions of like the ways that it's like, yeah, I'm very positive on the movie, but there are some like there are some things about it that are like, yeah, these are some issues that then I just gotta kind of explain them a little bit.
No, and that is 100% fine because I have my own issues with it. If you have some extra ones that I don't have, I love hearing them. I like to hear the different insights and how we differ from film to film in these franchises, whether it be this or Friday the 13th, Godzilla, whatever we're talking about. I like to hear what differences we liked and didn't like, and how we match up on these. So keep it coming.
Yeah, and it's always good to have you here to be like, look, that was a problem, but I didn't really care. It was still a good movie. It's nice to hear that opinion as well sometimes, keep me a little more grounded.
That is exactly what I'm here for. So that is all I have for our favorites categories. I know we haven't really dug into this too much and in comparing and contrasting them, but what did you think of the mask in this film?
I thought it was good. I think considering that it's sort of doing the whole like 40 years later aged up mask thing, and they were kind of playing around because it's like the mask would maybe possibly be in much worse condition. I mean, I suppose if it was well kept in like a sealed bag or something, I'm not here to determine how a latex mask would age over 40 years in any conditions, but whether it's realistic or not, it looked the part in terms of like coming back 40 years later. If it was like pristine, that wouldn't quite feel right. And if it was like a dilapidated, mangled mess that would maybe be more realistic, that wouldn't really look right either. I felt like they struck a natural balance, and it almost looks wrinkled like a face would be, as opposed to deteriorated like a mask would be. And I kind of think that in terms of the aesthetic, that was the right choice.
And I 100% agree with you. I do like that they, even though they made it look more so like the 78 mask, that they went with kind of like like you said, like the cracked look of like the first Rob Zombie Halloween film, how it kind of looked in that. But then, like you said, it looks, some of the parts of the mask almost look like wrinkled skin, like aged skin or something. Like I love how weathered it looks, but still how closely it resembles the original Halloween mask, because they've gotten the mask wrong for so, even as much as I've liked the masks in some of these films, they've always gotten it wrong compared to the original film. So coming back to this one, for it to look as close as the original one as it does in this film and still be weathered and aged and like it is, I absolutely loved it in theaters. I was excited about it. And I thought it was one of the best looks that we've had for Michael in the franchise. So
I do
I was
agree.
high on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they handled it. They approached it with care. I think with some of the other Halloween movies, it felt like it feels like the importance that should be put on Michael and the mask. It felt like a lot of the movies, for one reason or another, like ended up being like, well, we weren't able to really do that. Like they rushed through the mask, or just kind of settled on something bad, or changing it on the fly, or whatever. It's like this felt like a movie where they were like, hey, we've got to dedicate a certain stretch of time to figuring out the look and the mask in the planning stages, and kind of get something that's satisfying and then move forward. Whereas with a lot of the other movies, it felt like sometimes like the mask was like this weird afterthought, and then they were doing different masks and reshooting and all this stuff. And it's like, how does that not like one of the key things that you're getting right early on, and why is it so difficult to get it right? It shouldn't be this hard.
That's what I've been thinking for many films here in this franchise, and I'm sure a lot of other Halloween fans have as well.
Yep.
All right, Chris. So, do you want to lock into our Halloween and Friday the 13th comparison and compare the 2018 Halloween film with Freddy versus Jason, and which one you like more and why?
Yes. So the 11th film released to feature Jason is Freddy versus Jason, and the 11th film released in the Halloween franchise is Halloween 2018. And I gotta say it, like, Freddy versus Jason wins for me. Maybe I was playing my hand all day, but Freddy versus Jason wins out for me. Halloween 2018 is a great movie, and if you want to have that pretentious discussion, like Halloween 2018 is a better film than Freddy versus Jason. It's like a more reasonable script, and the performances are better, and cinematography in this, but Freddy versus Jason is way too damn fun and way too damn cool and way too damn entertaining, and I would watch it any day of the week over Halloween 2018 again.
I am highly upset with your decision, sir.
I had a feeling you would be.
I am on the opposite end of this. I would choose Halloween 2018 over Freddy vs. Jason. I have just, besides when I first saw Freddy vs. Jason, I have never been that high on Freddy vs. Jason. I don't like the portrayal of Jason very much. Robert Englund is always a welcome sight as Freddy Krueger, but the characters are just meh for me. They're very bland and stupid in that film. And I like Freddy vs. Jason a lot, but when it comes to like what Halloween 2018 did for the Halloween franchise, kind of 9 years after the pretty much the bomb that Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was, it brought us back to like the original roots with John Carpenter like doing the score and Jamie Lee Curtis coming back and just Michael Myers kind of like being scary and like in the shadows again, and Freddy versus Jason just kind of being like a blood soaked battle of Freddy and Jason, which is fun and all, but I do not watch that movie very often. I can have a good time with it, but I have much more fun watching Michael Myers in this film kind of make his way back to Haddonfield, and just everything about this film. I've always been high on Halloween 2018, and it's anybody who's listening to this can tell that it's one of my favorites in the franchise. And Freddy vs. Jason is kind of a middle of the pack film for me in the Friday the 13th franchise, and I think Halloween 2018 wins for me outright. I think it's a wash. As fun as Freddy versus Jason is, I think Halloween 2018 wins very easily for my likability and like me when I watch the film, how much fun I have and everything like that. So
Yeah,
for my book, Friday the 13th is still up 6-5 in the franchise, but how this one goes to Halloween.
yeah, and I can respect that. Like I said, I'll yield the sort of the better writing, better performances, sort of scarier movie. I'll yield that, but there's a tone and a style and a uniqueness to Freddy versus Jason that is so relentlessly what it is in terms of that sort of slightly campy, slightly horror comedy, but never at a point where it dampens the thrills or ruins the humor or anything like that. It's sort of it's Robert Englund's swan song, and it's like I said, it's just that sort of the entertainment factor and sort of delivering on the promise. It's Freddy versus Jason, and it is that sort of Clash of the Titans. It is that sort of like great sort of early 2000s, relentlessly early 2000s style and soundtrack, and and again, it's just so, in terms of being sort of like Freddy versus Jason is not a perfect movie, but for understanding the assignment, I think Freddy versus Jason nails it a little bit more than 2018, whereas 2018 is this good kind of reboot, but because it's sort of reboot number 2 with this sort of Laurie versus Michael storyline, it's sort of inherently retreading some of the same territory as Halloween H2O, but then trying to do it differently just to kind of do it differently and do it differently in accordance with 40 years later. And so it just feels like another thing of like, well, we've kind of been in this realm before. We've seen this sort of attempt at the final Laurie Michael showdown, and we've gotten another permutation of it. And so, and there's a lot of things about H2O that I prefer to how it's done in Halloween 2018. Plenty about 2018 that I prefer to H2O as well, but Halloween 2018 sort of is like it's like a near sort of like a near kind of completion of the assignment, or a near perfect kind of score and for what it's trying to deliver. Whereas Freddy vs. Jason, I think, gets a lot closer to delivering like all of its promise. That's all I have to say on that.
And I am absolutely not knocking you at all. I think either way we went with this one, I think it's a good choice for either franchise. So I'm
They're
not knocking
definitely
you.
strong entries for both franchises, I think.
Absolutely, and I'm not even with Freddy vs. Jason not being one of my favorites in the Friday the 13th franchise. Like it's still a fun time for any type of horror fan, and especially fans of Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. but so I'm not knocking anyone who would choose that film over Halloween 2018. But Chris prefers Freddy versus Jason. I prefer the 2018 Halloween. So I mean, we got two really good films here. So we're split on it. And I mean, who knows? I mean, we might be split on the next one as well. So I mean, Halloween, they got 13 films. Friday the 13th only has 12. So what, one will be I don't know if we can count Halloween Ends as a free win or if that'll go to Friday the 13th anyway, so even though they don't have a film for that one.
We can talk about Halloween Ends when we get to Halloween Ends.
Absolutely. So why don't we dig into some final thoughts here, and we'll get out of here and get on to our next episode after this one. So I'll jump into some quick final thoughts, and I love Halloween 2018. I loved it in theaters. I have a good time every time I watch it. From as I've stated 100 times, the score, the kills, the portrayal of Michael Myers, the portrayal of Jamie Lee Curtis. I love almost everything about this film. There's a couple things in this film that bug me, but I can get over those or ignore them and just have a good time with this film. It's an absolute must watch if you're a fan of the franchise. This is probably one film in the Halloween franchise I do watch every year in the Halloween season. So I mean, it's one of my favorites, and I don't think that's going to change. I can't wait to get to our ranking video so we can talk about where we rank all these films and things like that. But final thoughts are, I think this is a great return to the franchise.
Yeah, this is a really good entry. Definitely one of those that, newcomers, like, is a good starting point, or a good sort of, hey, I watched the original and I want to kind of go a little bit more, but I don't know about watching all the other ones. Like, it's a good, you know, but I've got issues with it, and it's a little bit flawed for me, but I think it's really solid. When I think of what are all of the sequels to the original Halloween, like, there's the Halloween 2, and then there's H2O that follows from that, and it's like, well, it's like, maybe when I'm thinking about it, like, I don't think I prefer, I don't know if I prefer this as, like, oh, going from the original and then to this one. It's like, it's good, but it's sort of that removal of the time and that big time gap. Like, there's something kind of lost there. And it makes it this sort of different tone and style, but it still does a lot of things really well. It's a horror franchise is a harder franchise to do a sort of legacy sequel with than some of the blockbuster series and things like that. And to do a 40-year gap is a tall order. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that inherent to it that it's hard for it to overcome. But they executed about as well as it could be, and it was a strong restart. And we'll see how it kind of plays out with the next two entries.
Absolutely. So as I said earlier in the episode, the 2018 Halloween film did have a direct sequel, which was titled Halloween Kills, released October 15th, 2021. And I did as well get to see that one in theaters, and that was a fun time. That should be a fun conversation because fans, that is a film that is a mixed bag for fans of the Halloween franchise. So it'll be fun to see which side of the fence you and I are on for that one.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll draw the comparison here to Jurassic World and Star Wars one more time. Generally speaking, Jurassic World, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and Halloween 2018 were all was all positive and went well, and things like that, and everyone generally kind of liked them. And then beyond that, the second entries in each of those trilogies sort of gets kind of divisive and split a little bit, and then the third entry is kind of, so we'll see how it goes and how it continues. But there's parallels with all these trilogies, and they all have these sort of really promising starts, and then it kind of goes into different directions.
Absolutely, but I can't wait to get into that conversation because when that's another one that the trailer for me was the marketing for it was great. So that'll be a fun conversation. But before we get out of here and get to that episode, of course, I will say thank you as always for joining me because it is always fun. 2 more Halloween films down, and then we are done with this franchise and we get to rank them all and see where we stand. So these last 2 episodes should be a good time.
Yeah, 100%.
So again, thank you for joining me. Thank anyone who's out there listening. Halloween Kills on our next episode, but until next time.
All right, pick your poison. I like a revolver. They never jam. This is accuracy and stopping power. This is tactical. He waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him.